Get out of this house right now if you don't want a divorce. That's what my husband said. All of a sudden, I was really surprised. He seemed very sure that I wouldn't want to divorce him if he said something like that. It made me feel like I had to talk to someone else about it. My name is Anna, and I work in an office. I'm 30 years old, and my husband James and I are almost celebrating our 5th wedding anniversary. We've been trying to have a baby, but it hasn't happened yet. My mother-in-law keeps asking when we'll have grandchildren, which stresses me out a lot. My father-in-law passed away a while ago, and my mother-in-law lives off the money he left behind. Her constant pressure about having grandchildren is really getting to me, maybe even making me feel like I'm going crazy. Even though James sees how stressed I am, he doesn't do anything to help. Lately, he's been taking his mom's side and blaming me for our problems. I used to really like him for being so kind when we were dating, but after we got married, he changed a lot. He didn't even ask me. He just decided we'd live near his parents' house. Almost every day when he's not at work, he wants me to go to his parents' house and do chores all day without any breaks. While I'm doing chores at my in-laws' house, they often go out or watch TV together. Once, I got yelled at for making too much noise with a vacuum cleaner. After that, they told me not to use it and to clean with a broom and rag instead. Then, my sister-in-law moved back in. She used to live nearby, but had some problems and had to come back. Her coming back made things even harder for me. She has a 4-year-old daughter and wants me to make her lunch every day. When I say I can't because of my job, my mother-in-law gets mad and says, "Your sister-in-law is dealing with a divorce." My husband says, "Can't you help the family?" And my sister-in-law says, "It'll be good practice for when you have your own child." So I wake up at 4:00 a.m. every morning to make my niece's lunch and breakfast for my in-laws, then go back home to finish my chores and go to work. That's the tough routine I'm stuck in, and my husband doesn't help with anything at home. The only time I get to rest is during my work breaks. One day, my husband dropped a bombshell on me. "You should quit your job." I've talked to my mom and sister about it. You know she's having a hard time. Don't you understand? No, I don't get it, I said. He snapped at me and went to take a bath. I couldn't see why my sister-in-law's divorce meant I should quit my job. My husband has a low-paying job, and there are times when I earn more than him. Does he think we can live on his salary alone? Neither my mother-in-law nor my sister-in-law work. I don't understand why they can't handle the housework. Feeling like I couldn't handle it anymore, I grabbed my car keys and drove to my childhood home, which is a bit far from where we live now. My parents had moved overseas, so the house was empty. I couldn't bring myself to talk to them about what was happening. Whenever things got tough, I come here. This place is full of happy memories. While I was lost in thought, my phone rang. It was my husband. "Hey, you're gone after I got out of the bath?" "Are you at your parents' place again?" "Yes," I said. "Can you stop going there every time something goes wrong?" His words didn't make sense to me. "I'll be working from here for a while. And no, I won't go to your parents' house either. Just come back home now." Feeling defeated, I went back home. Later, I quit my job in the fashion industry. My coworkers thought I might be pregnant, but they didn't know what was really going on. I never had any free time. I had to manage the household all day long, even when I got sick with a bad cold and high fever. No one seemed to care. I felt like I was just a servant in this house, to be honest. But one day, something surprising happened. Can you guess what? My sister-in-law was getting married again, and her fiancé was a big-shot executive at a major company, making a lot of money. It was quite unexpected. My sister-in-law isn't exactly what you'd call beautiful, and her personality isn't the best, but hey, Everyone has different tastes, and there are all kinds of people out there. The whole family was excited, talking about how she was marrying into wealth. My sister-in-law, all proud, showed me a photo of the guy. As I looked at the photo, my husband said something unbelievable. "Because of this, Anna, your parents' house will become my sister's family place." "Hold on, that house was left to me by my parents. It's not up to you to decide." "The whole family has decided. You who depends on my money don't get a say in this." Was the person in front of me really my husband? "That house was meant for me by my father, a place for me and my future children. James should know this. Why is he being so selfish?" My heart couldn't take it anymore. And to make things worse, my mother-in-law said, "You can't even give us a grandchild. Can't you do something useful around the house for once?" There was no one supporting me in this house. I hurriedly packed a few things and went to my parents' house, making a firm decision. I wasn't going back. A few days later, with no calls from my husband, I thought maybe he changed his mind. Then the doorbell rang suddenly. It was my husband and sister-in-law. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "We thought we'd take a look around," my sister-in-law said, pushing past me. Despite my protests, they ignored me, wandering through the house as if I wasn't there. "This house is pretty nice," my sister-in-law said, "but for you, Anna, when are you moving out?" My husband asked, unchanged. "My sister's wedding is coming up soon. Get it together." As I stayed quiet, my husband added, "If you don't want a divorce, leave now." My husband was sure I wouldn't divorce him, smiling alongside my sister-in-law. "Got it." Once I confirmed, my husband seemed pleased, saying it's all he wanted to hear. They're planning a family-only trip under the guise of celebrating my sister-in-law's wedding, starting tomorrow. Obviously, I'm not invited. My husband told me to pack up and leave by the time they get back. And they left, looking excited. I allowed myself a small, bitter smile. 2 weeks later, the day for my in-laws to return arrived. My phone had been ringing nonstop since morning. It was my husband, along with calls from my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. Unable to ignore it any longer, I answered. "Hey, Anna, where are you?" "I'm at home," I replied. "Liar. You're not at the apartment or your parents' place. And what's this about a for sale sign on the family house?" "Yeah, I put it up for sale." "What? Why?" "Well, after you all laughed, I thought about it. The house you're in now just seems so dirty. I like things to be clean. I'm divorcing you. Don't mess with me," my husband yelled. That was going to be my line. "Let's talk to our lawyers from now on," I said firmly, and hung up on him while he was still yelling. On the day my husband and sister-in-law returned, I had already contacted a friend of my father's who runs a real estate company. I didn't know much about selling houses, but he kindly guided me, and we made a pretty good deal. By the way, the apartment we were living in was in my name, since my husband couldn't pass the screening process, since I had no intention of staying there anymore. I canceled the lease while they were away and sent all of my husband's belongings to his parents' house with them paying for delivery. Even after that, I kept getting calls from my in-laws, which I completely ignored. I recorded all the awful messages they left on my voicemail. According to my lawyer, my husband was hesitant about the divorce, even though he said he wanted it. It seemed he didn't want to lose his maid. I thought it would be a tough fight, but then suddenly my husband agreed to the divorce. My lawyer told me they all showed up at his office, saying they wanted to divorce me and to do it quickly. My husband had been unsure about the divorce, but my mother-in-law convinced him that since my sister-in-law's new husband was rich, they could hire a new housekeeper with money and replace me with a younger wife. Hearing this, my husband agreed to the divorce. They also offered a small settlement if I agreed not to bother them anymore. I thought that was supposed to be my line, but I decided to accept their offer. Soon after my sister-in-law got remarried, life was quiet for a while after that. Taking care of myself turned out to be much easier than I expected. I wish I'd divorced sooner. Well, I'm finally free. Time to enjoy my new life. Just as I was starting to settle into my new life, out of nowhere, my in-laws showed up at my doorstep. The moment I opened the door, they barged in, and my ex-husband demanded, "We need to talk. Sit down." Feeling bewildered, I reluctantly took a seat. Then he said, "Come back home. We forgive you." I couldn't believe what I was hearing, so I replied, "Excuse me." I wanted them to leave right away, so I joked, "Who are you talking about?" "Your sister's husband. Has he vanished?" Their eyes widened as if to say, "How do you know about that?" And they stared at me. "What do you know?" my ex-husband asked. "Something. After we got married, he suddenly disappeared. We can't reach him," the mother-in-law added, sounding excited. "And to make things worse, he ran off with her family's money. Was this your doing? You've brought us such bad luck, daughter-in-law." She looked like she was about to attack me. Tired of their accusations, I decided to reveal a truth to them. "Wow, I didn't know your sister liked hamburgers so much." "What? Why are you suddenly talking about hamburgers?" "Don't you know? Your sister's husband isn't some executive at a big company. He's just a part-time worker at a hamburger joint." Hearing this, my sister-in-law froze speechless. I continued, "Back when I was single, my friend and I used to visit different burger places. There was one where a guy always messed up orders and got yelled at. Turns out it was your sister's husband. When I started dating my husband, he said, 'No more burgers,' so I stopped going. I recognized him from a photo your sister showed me, but I didn't want to interfere. When I showed her the burger joint's website for proof, she looked at her husband's picture there, by the way. I visited the shop recently, but he wasn't there anymore. He probably left town. That sounds like marriage fraud, doesn't it? That's what they call it. I'm sorry for your loss," the previously silent mother-in-law said. "You knew, and you didn't tell us. We took care of you, who couldn't even have children for years. You owe us," she continued. Fed up with her unreasonable accusations, I decided to reveal another truth I've been keeping. Firstly, I'm not the reason we couldn't have kids. Maybe my ex-husband can fill you in on that. The mother-in-law looked at her son in shock, and he guiltily avoided eye contact. When we couldn't conceive after marriage, at the mother-in-law's insistence, we got tested. Turns out there was nothing wrong with me, but my husband had a very low sperm count. The doctor said he was the reason we couldn't have kids. When the mother-in-law asked about the test results, my husband instantly lied, saying I was the problem. I was furious, but they just kept saying things like, "You have to support your husband," refusing to face the truth. My ex-husband teamed up with my mother-in-law, blaming me for everything. Eventually, he admitted, "Okay, I was wrong. When the house sells, we'll get a good amount of money, right? Let's all live happily as a family again," my ex-husband said. "Well, we've been through a lot, but let's get along from now on," my mother-in-law added. By the end of the day, I realized they probably came here today with the intention of getting their hands on my money. What a disgusting bunch. "There's no way I'm getting back together with you, and I don't consider any of you family," I declared. Upon hearing this, my ex-husband snapped back, "Feeling a bit too confident now, huh? I know you don't have much savings. Even if you sell the house, how do you plan to survive?" It seems he had snooped into my bank account during my single days, and now he had this smug look on his face, as if to say, "Now that you know, do as you're told." To mock my situation, the three of them were smirking at me. So I decided to tell them a little truth. Sure, I don't have much money saved up, but actually I've put my money into stocks. Enough to live without a job for a few years, at least. They looked surprised when they heard this. Ever since I was young, my dad was into stocks and making smart investments. I learned from him and made some good investments myself. The money that helped my parents move overseas came from those successful investments. I never told my greedy ex a dang thing about this. Seeing their disappointed faces, I told them they could leave. But then I remembered something from the divorce agreement. If we meet without a good reason, one of us has to pay a penalty. I threatened to call the police if they didn't leave. That scared them off, and they hurried away. I called my lawyer right away and was told to let him know if they tried to come back. As expected, once they found out I had money, my ex-husband started begging me to get back together. He sent me messages with old photos and weird stuff like, "I'm here thinking about the good times." It was annoying, but I kept the messages as proof. I wondered how he could text me all day and still work, but I didn't really care. When he started bothering my friends, I had enough. I warned him that I'd go to the police if he kept it up. I sent him a picture of our divorce agreement in the nearest police station. After that, he stopped messaging me, and I never heard from him again. I thanked my lawyer, and then he told me something shocking. Turns out, my ex-husband had a plan to rely on his sister's new husband for money. He even quit his job when she got remarried. It was pretty dumb of him to leave a good job at a good company. I've asked for some documents. They should be coming soon. I told my lawyer I had also asked another lawyer for help with a different issue. After we got married, I started noticing something strange. My favorite things were slowly disappearing. First, it was a necklace I bought when I was single. Then it was a fountain pen my parents gave me when I started working. Bags, rings, and especially the fountain pen, which meant a lot to me, all vanished one by one. When I confronted my husband about the missing things, he just yelled at me to stop worrying. That made me even more suspicious. So, without telling him, I set up a camera in our closet. What it caught was shocking. My husband and mother-in-law going through my stuff and looking pleased with themselves. And when my sister-in-law moved back in, the camera showed 3 of them instead of 2. They took advantage of me not saying anything and kept doing it. They were secretly selling my stuff for money. They probably noticed the balance in my bank account and thought they could get away with it. This went on until we got divorced, and I gathered a lot of evidence. When they thought I wouldn't do anything, I sued them for damages and emotional distress caused by their actions. They're probably freaking out now, but they brought it on themselves. As for what happened to them, my sister-in-law's ex-husband found out about the incident and took custody of their daughter. Since my sister-in-law didn't seem to care much for her daughter, I felt relieved. Recently, I saw the daughter and her ex-husband happily shopping together, holding hands. She had a genuine smile, something I rarely saw when she was with my in-laws. The 3 of them who wanted to live comfortably tried to get welfare, but they were denied because they were healthy and didn't qualify. My husband, too proud to find another job, ended up begging his old workplace for his job back. But they were glad he had quit and called the police when he wouldn't leave. Now he has to take day labor jobs to make ends meet. My mother, mother-in-law, and sister-in-law had to pay me compensation, so they both started working part-time at a nearby supermarket. But since they weren't used to working, they struggled with their new jobs. Interestingly, ever since they started working there, the supermarket sales have dropped significantly. They've earned themselves a nickname, the plague-bringing mother and daughter. By the way, that hidden camera from my marriage is still around. Turns out they were renting the house they lived in, not owning it like I thought. When they couldn't afford the rent, they moved to a rundown apartment that's known for being pretty bad. They're barely making ends meet, and it seems like they're always arguing. The other day, the police had to come because their fights were so loud. As for me, thanks to their help, I sold the house and used the money to start a new clothing company with a colleague from my old job. Lately, we've been getting more customers and even getting featured in magazines and on TV. Being able to do the work I love again is the best thing ever. Oh, and there's more good news. I met a man through work, and we're getting married. His family is really nice to me, and they've treated me like one of their own. Plus, we're expecting a baby, and I can't wait to be a mom. Right now, I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life.